We've got our moderator, Anna Copeland, with us, founding partner and advisor who will moderate the panel on waste management and treatment. We should have as well Nigel, Mattravers, joint venture representative, New Life Plastics Limited. Then David Bishop, founder of Soap Cycling and a lecturer at the University of Hong Kong. And finally, Brian Taylor, senior editor of Recycling Today Media Group. Introduce Anna, the moderator of today's session on waste management and treatment. So Anna is the founding partner and advisor of Orca. Anna has over 30 years of experience in environmental and social risk management and due diligence, sustainability strategy development, management and reporting, and stakeholder engagement and training. Anna was an environment and social specialist for the Asia Pacific region with the International Finance Corporation based in Hong Kong. And previously, she worked as a consultant with BMT Asia Pacific, G.R.E.E.N Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong Productivity Council, and with the LURIA group in Toronto and Halifax, Canada. Anna also lectured at the University of Hong Kong for the Master of Science in Environmental Management degree program and is a partner at Orca Asia. So now, Anna, the floor is yours, and you can introduce the individual speakers, followed by their individual introductions.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and thank you to Soap Cycling and Green Hospitality for hosting the event, and Shirley for your very interesting, holistic approach, introduction to our panel. I will introduce our first speaker, Nigel Mattravers. Now, Nigel is leading a team at New Life Plastics Limited to develop Hong Kong's first advanced plastic bottle reprocessing facility at the Eco Park. He is a chartered engineer and resource and waste manager with over 45 years of experience, focusing on studies, design, finance, and project management for numerous resource management schemes in Hong Kong and the United Kingdom. Over to you, Nigel.
Hold on, we have to unmute Nigel, but we cannot find him, so sorry about that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Right. Okay. And can I have the slide, please? Thank you very much. Yeah, so very briefly, I'm here today to talk about the work we're doing at New Life Plastics, which is trying to tackle part of that massive plastic mountain that Shirley described earlier. In particular, the PET and HDPE bottles, with Hong Kong producing something in excess of 5 million PET bottles every day. And so this organization, New Life Plastics, is a coming together of 3 companies. Can I just stay on the other slide, please? Of Alba from Germany. I've been in the recycling business for about 50 years. G.R.E.E.N, I think is probably well known along Hong Kong for waste collection and cleaning. And Swire Coca-Cola probably don't need any introduction. Next slide, please. The key challenge with everything at the moment, and some of the things we've been talking about earlier today, is encouragement of people to provide the material. And there's a huge issue to do with trust. People don't trust the bins. There have been comments here already about the 3-color bins, and do they really actually end up going to landfill? And similarly, I think Shirley presented some bins before that the government have paid for, but then nobody really knows where do they go when they've been emptied. So we're going to work through with the education teams and the like to encourage more collection through the networks, but keeping it free from contamination. It's only by doing that can we actually make a case for processing the bottles efficiently. But what is really important to us is the fact is that we're not going to downcycle the materials. We're looking to achieve that the RPET, the PET bottles, will stay as food grade right the way through the process and become rPET and can be reused again for the manufacture of food containers. But throughout this, because again, people again have been very untrustworthy of waste systems in Hong Kong. And does it actually disappear to the Northern New Territories? And does it then get shipped to Macau or something like that? Or sorry, Malaysia. And so we're going to be transparent through the whole system of the work that we do. And finally ensure that it goes to a good home and doing a proper environmental system. Next picture, please. So where are we going to do it? Yeah, we're in Eco Park, and we are designing this facility, building. It will be operational by the end of this year. It'll be the first of its kind in Hong Kong. It's going to be a world-class facility with a throughput potentially of up to 35,000 tonnes a year, which is like 100 tonnes a day. But all the way through the operation, we're going to be looking at the environmental aspects of how we're doing it. Solar panels on the roof, as many as we can fit. We're recovering the heat from the process to put into the washing of the materials. We look at the energy lighting, and of course, it's very importantly, recycling the industrial water that comes from the process. And last one, please. And so this is what we're looking to produce, food grade ready rPET flakes. This will be unfortunately exported because we don't have any manufacturing in Hong Kong at the moment, but it will be laboratory tested and will provide certification as to its final destination, but also high grade HDPE pellets, which obviously come from, tend to be shampoo bottles and the like, for which there is a bigger sort of local market. So that's in brief. We're looking to try and help manage the massive problem of Hong Kong and its plastic bottles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nigel. We'll have time for questions after. I would now like to introduce, my honor to introduce David Bishop. It's the reason we're all here today, the founder of Slope Cycling. So David Bishop is an award-winning lecturer at the University of Hong Kong, specializing in teaching law and ethics and creating commercial solutions to large social problems. Over the past 6 years, he has founded, co-founded, or helped scale more than 30 social enterprises in Hong Kong and abroad. Among others, he is the founder of Soap Cycling and or co-founder of Foundation for Shared Impact, Migrate Asia, Global Solutions, Polaris Tools, Empower You, and the Fair Employment Agency. So, David, over to you.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, I did not write that introduction. It makes it sound like I'm more important than I am. Basically, I'm super, super excited. I'm the least expert person on this very expert panel, but I think to a certain extent, that's why my attendance on this panel is useful, because I think it's an example of how anyone who's serious about addressing these issues, if they're just willing just to try, then you know, changes can be inspired and hopefully improvement goes forward. It's interesting because tomorrow is actually the 8th-year anniversary of the official launch of Soap Cycling. And a lot of the companies that are represented here today, especially on the hospitality and in terms of like soap manufacturing, like Ming5, people that are on the call today, were there at the beginning or shortly thereafter, and we've been able to grow together. And it's been so amazing to participate in that growth. But more importantly, from my perspective, as an educator and someone who created Soap Cycling as an opportunity for youth empowerment and youth leadership, I'm so happy to see people like Justin, who is the chairperson at Soap Cycling, but was also one of the students there right at the beginning to help us get started. Just very, very quick, because Soap Cycling, although we are kind of the organization that originally organized this with Green Hospitality, we didn't actually introduce ourselves. And so since that 8-year span of time, my students and I have kind of muddled along over the years, and we've been able to distribute over 3.5 million bars of soap across Asia. It started with that physical waste, specifically with soap waste. That was enough soap for 250,000 kids for a year. And in Hong Kong and 6 other countries, so 7 countries total, we've engaged more than 32,000 volunteers. And from my perspective, this is a leadership model. And so we've been able to provide 330 students with management opportunities. So that is really why I'm here. Everyone else on the panel is an expert from a handling of the solid waste, especially from a recycling standpoint. And so the perspective that I just want to take very briefly is kind of thinking about the reduction and the redesign of our products. From the soap cycling standpoint, because we've been handling the solid waste, either plastic waste, the soap waste, textiles, and many other things, even rice bags from Cathay Pacific, and helping upcycle and reuse a lot of products that many of the companies that are here today use. We've learned a lot about the design process and understanding what can and should be done in order to use design and the underlying materials and products that your customers are going to eventually use to help enhance the collection and processing of that waste. But from my expertise at Hong Kong U, I actually focus specifically on ethics and behavioral incentives. And so, as many people have pointed out throughout, no matter what tools we create, and no matter how we, the plants and other things that we operate, we have to get into the behavior modification side of things and really think about proper incentives in terms of whether it's a hospitality customer, so when traveling, coming in, most people don't realize that consumption, and when you are traveling, goes up by 70 to 80% because you have this distance. You're not thinking about the impact on your community. You're kind of letting go and saying, hey, I'm on holiday, I can do whatever I want, which for the most part is fine. But unfortunately, that means that our consumption goes way up within the travel and tourism industry. And so it's important for us to look back, as Carmen and other people said, and say, how can we help our customers and our guests understand what they're doing and their responsibility in this process? And the last thing that we're focusing on that I think today is really all about is community building and building partnerships and really working together. I think, the industry, whether the hospitality industry, the NGO industry, or even from an academic standpoint, we're all working within our silos, and it's critical that we really get together and talk through these things, which has been such an eye-opening and helpful experience for me and for our entire team. And so to the extent that we can be of assistance, either directly from HKU, from Green Hospitality, or from Soap Cycling, please do reach out, because we're so excited by the community that's been built and are very excited to see where it's going to grow and continue to move going forward.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, David. Now, over to Brian. Sorry about that. Brian Taylor joined the Recycling Today Media Group in September 1997, where he serves as a senior editor. The Recycling Today Media Group is part of the United States-based G.R.E.E. Media, Inc. And it publishes and creates websites, e-newsletters, print periodicals, as well as events for the global recycling market. This includes metals, paper, plastic, and building materials for all those recycling sectors. Brian is a graduate of the University of Toledo in Ohio and has been a business journalist for 30 years. In his current role, he works from Hong Kong, tracking commodity pricing, and gathers information on processing technologies, equipment, and emerging recycling markets. So Brian, over to you to share your global insights and knowing how things are working here in Hong Kong as well.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Anne. And I think I do have 2 slides, if I remember correctly, that I've prepared. Thanks. One is simply my contact information, or at least my email address, you might see over there in green. And that is, in case somebody 6 hours later, 6 days later has a question, they think maybe that guy from Recycling Today would know something about this. Please do get hold of me. I don't mind. It's my job to hear from people who are either asking questions, or if you have an idea for a story, I'm always willing and able to listen to that too. So that's simply where you can find our website and how you can reach me via email. Next slide, please. I tried to keep this fairly short, obviously, just three observations, and I tried to look for consensus, I guess I'll call it. The global recycling industry is huge, and the manufacturing sectors it serves are even bigger. So to get recyclers and their buyers and customers to agree on anything is difficult. But I think these are some trends that that are sort of have shaped themselves into consensus over the last few years. Number one is that recycling challenges as they exist, most are logistical, not technological. So even the demonized plastic straw, the technology exists. We can chop that up, we can clean it up, we can turn it into new straws. The logistical portion of that is when you had all those straws just coming out of the factory gate in, say, South China, well, boy, that was the time to recycle them because they're all together, you have the bulk, but that's not how it works. So straws go onto pallets, they go into shipping containers and trucks, and they scatter to 16,000 different restaurants in 5,000 different cities, and you'll never get those straws back into one place. So I think that's, just sort of an overarching theme lately. We realize, the technology exists. We can recycle this stuff. We just can't get it all back into one place. That's going to be Nigel's challenge to some extent at New Life. The second one is provide opportunities and directions, and given the chance, many people will do the right thing. And here I'm referring to containers, the recycling collection bins, and Shirley showed a few good ones that are right here in Hong Kong. And I've also seen some in Hong Kong that maybe are not so state of the art, where it just maybe says plastic with the chasing arrows, and people will put anything in there that could be or is made of plastic. And this is, again, I think, as Nigel knows all too well, they only want certain types of plastic. You can't turn a piece of polypropylene into PET, and it's just, so when a bin is placed or when a recycling program is launched, don't spare the information without being overburdensome. Make sure people, at least you're trying to let them know the good and the bad, and don't end up with a bunch of what's being called wish cycling. Well, I wish this gets recycled, so I'll put it in the bin. Because this, and I have a little audio prop here, I guess. This is just a little plastic bag my Bluetooth device came in, and it has the chasing arrows and the number 4 LDPE. But if I put this in one of the bins that goes to Nigel's plant, he really won't, I don't think, be able to do much of anything with that. So just one of those things to remember when you're setting up a program at a hotel. More directions, the better. The last one is, I typed this 3 times intentionally. It's kind of a tribute to that old real estate saying, what are the 3 most important aspects of a property? Well, number 1 is location, number 2 is location, and number 3 is location. And I think increasingly there's pretty good consensus that if something is going to get recycled, it has to be designed to be fairly easily recycled. Not a lot of disassembly. It's made out of a common material. It's just, it has a chance. And I think we heard some, I heard what I thought was good news coming from Carmen and Iris in the previous session, that as they get involved as sustainability officers, it's not just on the loading dock of things leaving, they're getting involved in the purchasing, which is, I think the people listening to me, you all know, that's crucial. That's where the work starts. The best way to solve a recycling challenge is to not have it occur in the first place. Just buy things that are recyclable. I think that's all. I think covers my modest 3 points.
Thank you so much, Brian. You've all raised some interesting points that we've been grappling with for many years. I mean, the good thing is that it's all the pieces of the puzzle are starting to be talked about in a more comprehensive, substantive way. And it looks like some of those pieces are going to come together and hopefully work soon. Nigel, you talked about confidence. What do you think are some of the most important things that need to be done to build confidence, to make the system work, and to enable people to, have the clean recycling that you need?
Transparency. Right from the very beginning, as Brian pointed out, a lot of the recycling bins are highly contaminated. So it's really essential to have separate bins for bottle waste. I agree, the other plastic waste is a problem that's got to be dealt with. Let's say we're dealing with bottles. And then to be clear indication of where it's gone to. At the moment, it disappears off to somewhere in the northern New Territories, and you're not really sure where it's gone or what's happened to it. And then equally showing evidence of where the final destination of the processed material has been. And as I say, HKO1 did a review piece a few months ago, you know, where they tracked plastic bottles that had gone into recycling bins and they went to landfill, you know. And so we've got to overcome that by being as transparent as possible. We want people to come and visit our factory so they can actually see the operations. We're going to have everything on our website. You'll see our performance in terms of waste, contamination, energy use, and for those who want to be able to provide evidence as to where the material has eventually gone to for that.
Will you help provide that transparency in through what you're collecting and what you're processing, and provide that feedback on where improvements can be made so that it can be addressed?
Yes, no, that's the whole point. We want to be there, and I think several people throughout the morning have picked up this whole issue of not knowing exactly where things are going through. You know, what actually does happen, you know, to the various things that people are trying to look after. And obviously, ultimately, we want to stop the material going into the landfill, or even worse, you know, getting into the oceans. So, you know, management and ownership and traceability and trust, I think, is key to people, and then more people will engage. You know, we're having education, but people will say, "Well, I don't believe it." You know, all of us have got to work together to give trust to people.
Right. And Brian, you have been looking at recycling systems all over the world, and to focus in on your design for recycling, and knowing how things are working in Hong Kong, if we're going to achieve and build confidence in the system that Nigel and the whole team is developing, and tying in with what exists and what the government's planning, what do you think are some of the most important priorities or challenges that absolutely must be addressed?
Well, I think targeting specific materials, and that seems to be what's being done. You know, in researching, preparing for this conference, I found a study from 2011, 35 hotels in the UK. So specific to the hospitality industry, you know, this waste audit found that 37% of what the waste that was being produced was food scraps, and 15% was plastic. So that's more than half right there. And certainly the figures surely G.R.E.E.N shows that Hong Kong overall, pretty similar, you know, there's a similar composition and makeup. So I think a government and the private sector and a sustainability officer at a company, they really need to target in on the biggest wedges of that pie. And you know, you can only bite off so much in any given year, any given plan that goes 5 or 10 years. Probably not going to be able to quite get down to zero waste quite that quickly, but try to take those biggest slices first. And you know, it's kind of encouraging, I think, today, and the way this conference is set up, that food waste got its own hour and plastic got its own hour, because those are big pieces of that pie.
Thank you. I'd like to ask David a question, and then check in with Lucia to see if there are any questions she'd like to raise that are coming through the chat. So David, behavioral change. You did mention about on holiday people want to have fun and all of that, but there are, I'm sure you also done a lot of research into how people are becoming more conscious, not in that they don't just leave that at the door when they go on holiday. So for the hospitality sector, which is, of course, I mean, there we're dealing with international views on waste reduction and how to address these issues. So what do you think are some of the most effective ways for the hospitality industry to engage with their customers from all different walks of life and countries with different views, and to make it as easy as possible for their behaviors to be incentivized to then support the systems that have been designed well to reduce waste and then to capture as much of the recyclables as possible?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a conversation with me if I didn't say something controversial. I don't think there's any evidence to show that people are actually more conscious about their own sustainability. I think what we're doing is we're providing more and better opportunities for people to feel better about their consumption and their use. And I would argue that a lot of recycling falls into that bin pretty closely. I think, you know, effectively, you can't recycle your way out of this problem. And so from a hospitality perspective, I think travel and tourism accounts for 1 out of every, basically 20% of, or 10% of jobs globally. And it's set to be 20% of jobs globally within the next decade or so. And I think we have to understand, as Brian said, not only focusing on specific aspects of waste, but also understanding that this is a core driver of the future of waste, especially solid waste. And we have a great opportunity because of COVID-19, where there could be a fundamental shift in terms of how the entire industry redefines luxury. And I heard someone say this at a conference before, and I think this is exactly the way to go, is to redefine. So when did a plastic bottle in your room become a part of that definition of luxury? When did the toothbrush that you could throw away be part of the definition of luxury? But that is what we expect now. And I think we have a great opportunity to reinvent that conversation and to calibrate people in the right direction. So I think it starts there with communicating publicly. People have already mentioned education within schools. I think the Hong Kong government definitely can do more in that direction. But then also in terms of educating customers and making that information available to them, helping them see their waste and their energy use by comparison to other guests. I think those are things that hospitality companies are looking at. And I think as consumers get more comfortable with seeing that and recognizing their own contribution, then you're going to see a big change.
Thank you. I noticed that Shirley, you posted something about the Loop Hong Kong. Would you like to talk about how APD can help facilitate that? Is Shirley still connected to the panel? Okay. Maybe in the meantime, Lucia, were there any questions that you wanted to raise from the chat?
Oh, I was answering a question from the chat about the one man company, the Loops Hong Kong. I think he can try to apply, then check out the recycling fund. As mentioned, we have offered a $1 billion recycling fund since October 2015, and companies doing recycling business can consider applying for financial help. Yeah.
I do see some questions about contamination, and you know, when you're out and about in the community and you have, well, most of us don't avoid the plastic bottles. We have our reusable containers, but for those who do have the plastic bottles, you know, there isn't a tap beside the recycling facility to rinse the bottle. So I mean, when you're at home, you can clean your recyclables. So what is the plan for addressing contamination? Yeah, Nigel, for and also, you know, stuff that comes off beach cleanups or park cleanups. You know, how could that get into to be captured by the facility and system?
Okay. Yeah, as far as the bottles are concerned, when our plant is working in the end of the year, you do not need to wash your bottle. You do not need to take the cap off. You do not need to take the label off, because one of the barriers to recycling is it's too difficult. And it's okay if you're at home and you can spend the time to do all those good things, but as you say, if you're walking through the country park and then you're finished, you want to find a bin, you're not going to do those things. We would like the bottles to be empty, but we don't need to wash them or take the labels off or take the caps off. So that is something that hopefully will make it easier for people to recycle the bottles when our facility is up and running. Yeah.
And as part of building the confidence and awareness, and David, you know, what if you like to comment on that, getting people to care, what is coming up in terms of trying to really change perceptions, engage people more to move the needle on reduction and recycling here in Hong Kong?
Is that for me?
For you or Brian or Nigel?
I'm curious to hear what Brian has to say.
Well, in terms of moving the needle, it is partly providing opportunity. I mean, if you know, there's one of those other truisms that maybe I could have put in that slide is that one way to make sure you try to optimize your recycling rate is wherever there's a waste bin, have a recycling bin located adjacent to it. And that could be, you know, on the sidewalk in Causeway Bay, or at construction and demolition site, or at a housing complex. It just give people the chance to maybe put something in a recycling bin, and hopefully the right thing, but if you give them a chance, it improves your odds. But the other thing I think comes down to, David used the phrase behavior modification, and that's tougher. You know, that's asking people to really think about this and even be willing to be inconvenienced to consume less or go out of their way to properly discard and recycle what they cast off on a daily basis. And behavior modification, I'll admit, that's not something I write about as much, and I suspect that will be an ongoing challenge. And there's probably people Nigel works with that are, or Shirley that they work with, that's their wheelhouse. They're trying to get that to change.
Talking about behavior change, our government is actually quite disappointed that the MSW charging scheme cannot get through. So because from our study, we noticed that for other places like Korean, Seoul and Taipei City, when they started the municipal solid waste, the waste disposal dropped by some 30% in the areas. So actually the charging can, I think, in some way drive behavior change if possible, yeah.
Okay. Nigel, do you know if there are some, we've talked about volumes that are recycled and captured, but I mean, do you have goals, objective, concrete targets on what you hope to be able to capture through the system, which is hopefully designed and supported well to succeed?
Yes, I just saw the question. The capacity of the plant as it stands and it is 100 tons a day, of which 70 tons is probably PET and 30 tons HDPE. We don't know exactly how much is produced in Hong Kong. The numbers, unfortunately, are vague. It could be there's 140 tons a day of PET. Therefore, we're really only, even if we work really hard, we're really only going to get half of that material. It does leave opportunities for others to try and do that. But you know, it's been said quite a few times earlier on, it's capturing this material is the biggest challenge. It is low value material. It is bulky. A bottle weighs 25 grams. The people, the collectors in the street love collecting cardboard. It's nice and heavy. You pack it flat and government will give you a subsidy for the collection of it. Aluminium cans have a high value. Plastic, as it stands, has very low value. We do hope that government will be able to move forward with their producer responsibility scheme for plastics, which then would add a value to that plan. We do hope that LegCo eventually tackles the municipal waste charging policy, which again will start adding value. But that's the real challenge for plastics in particular, other materials as well, is the low value of the material as it stands at the moment.
I mean, we all know how we need carrots, sticks, and economies of scale and effective systems to make this happen. I think we're probably getting close to running out of time. Could I ask our panelists if you'd like to share any final insights or wishes or hopes for to the hospitality sector on what you would like to see happen, what you think's most needed in closing.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly. I think, you know, we talked a lot about education and behavioral change. And I think looking at what Brian said, more than 50% of solid waste comes from two specific things. And so when we look at everything in the aggregate, especially in terms of our own individual contribution, it can seem completely unachievable. It can seem like a problem that can't be solved. The reality is that you know, the way that you get systems change is you focus very specifically on, you know, the lowest hanging fruit that can accomplish the most good and have the most utility in the shortest period of time. And I think as we're hearing, people are more conscious of these things. The companies are now realizing there's real incentive, especially from a consumer demand standpoint, to actually address these issues. I think as long as we don't get overwhelmed and you know, don't deal with the decision fatigue and just focus on these things on an individual basis, I think you'll see there's going to be incremental change over time throughout the entire industry.
Nigel?
Oh, sorry, I missed the question.
No, do you have any closing remarks or?
Oh, sorry, I was just responding to one of the other queries coming through. We've all got to work together across the whole business. The academia, the hospitality sector, the consumer and government. It's all our responsibilities, and we've all got to work together to try and deliver this. Not one person, not one group.
Brian and then Shirley.
Okay, I saw a question pop into the bottom of my screen that came and went, but it was from somebody who wanted to know, why is it the taxpayers are the ones that are always asked to fund these recycling plans and schemes all too often? And that certainly is, you know, the story of what I've written about the last 20 years is often who foots the bill. If we want to recycle more of this, who foots the bill? So I guess, you know, my thought, the people of Hong Kong and sustainability officers is, you know, ask that same question. You know, if Europe has taken a pretty bold stance at putting recycling targets and mandates in place. I don't know that ever happens in Hong Kong, but you know, if people ask the question often enough, maybe it forces some things to change.
Okay, thank you. Shirley, would you like to inspire us on how things are going to get better and better?
I'm glad to see like the government, the commercial sector, and the hospitality, the industry, we are all working together, try to help to improve the environment. And I'm glad to learn that. Let's work hand in hand, and I hope we can create a better environment.
Great, thank you. So in closing, I think we've had a very interesting, brief discussion about how we have to build confidence in the new systems and structures that are being put in place, and that there is a big momentum and collaboration across all sectors to try to affect change. It is urgent. It is a real threat to us right now, how we can landfill spilling. So I think let's all continue to share and work. And I'd like to thank Shirley, Nigel, David, and Brian for sharing today. And of course, Green Hospitality Soap Cycling for this very important day of sharing. And let's continue to work together to affect change. Thank you all.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.